businesses below 5,000 were just like genuinely interesting and cool businesses. Run the numbers and it's like, okay, if I buy a pre-revenue business for 5,000, how much can I actually make from it, right? Can I make 500 a month? What their potential is, what they're charging customers, how can you reach those customers? How many people do you need to reach? You also don't want to look at somebody that's like 20 steps ahead of you, right? You want to be talking to somebody that's 2 steps ahead of you or not that far ahead of you, because then they're also actively in the game, right?
Welcome to The First Sip, where we talk to cool people that do cool shit and try to learn a few things to help us build better businesses and healthier ones.
Today, I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Dev Shah. He's a 21-year-old student and founder of Sourcely AI. He acquired Sourcely just 4 months ago and scaled it from an acquisition value of $4,000 all the way up to $150,000. Today, we'll be talking about balancing work and school, finding your niche, how to acquire companies, and how to scale a company and go against the grain in a world filled with gurus where survivorship bias can create a lot of noise in what you should do in your marketing efforts. Enjoy. So, Dev, I found you on Twitter basically by accident when I started my journey maybe 10 weeks ago, and you immediately stood out to me. You were doing these deep dives. I read your pinned thread. You went on this complete tirade going through businesses, going through acquired. You seem to have such a ridiculous pedigree when it came to the understanding of the valuation of businesses, how to find businesses. And then I look at your bio and I'm like, $25,000 at 18. First of all, how old are you now? Are you 19 or 20? Where are you at now?
No, I'm 21 now. Yeah, so
21 now. Okay, so 21
yeah.
now. So as I was going through, all of a sudden I see that you're scaling this business, and then a post drops, and you've taken a business that you just chatted with me about maybe 3 weeks prior about how you wanted to start onboarding customers, and all of a sudden it went from 4,000 to 100,000. So walk me through that, man. Where did that come from?
No, dude, first of all, thanks a lot for those kind words. You make it sound a lot more impressive than, I think
It's
it
all for
is.
the clickbait.
Oh, yeah, no, I think like starting from the beginning, so we acquired Saucely. So just a bit of background on what Saucely is. It's kind of like an alternative to Google Scholar. So
Mhm.
it has added filterability in terms of you can filter your searches by a minimum number of citations, year of publication, things like that. So yeah, so we acquired Saucely for $4,000 about 4 months ago now. And so we bought it on acquire.com, and it was making about $500 a month at the time in revenue. And the people we bought it from were students themselves, right? So it was two dudes in college in the UK, and they were actually in medical college, so they really had a lot of other work and didn't quite know what they had, right? So I think that, and actually they had been, I think they told us that they had been listed for like couple of months before that, but really had like not a lot of buyers, genuine buyers contact them. So that's why
Wow.
we were able to buy it for a fairly cheap price, like at point 0.8 annual recurring revenue. It was like honestly a very, very good price, right? According to acquire.com's multiples, a business like that would be worth at least 2 to 3 times annual recurring revenue, and
Mhm.
that would value it in itself at around 12,000. Um, so because 500 a month, 6,000 in annual recurring revenue, so about 12,000 valuation. So in from the beginning, we kind of got a good deal on it, and that so we already had like that going for us.
So
The
you're
sec
like, girl math, I've saved 60% on this. I've saved money even though I've spent money. And that
yeah.
was like, that pushed you into it. You're like, I got to do it now.
Oh yeah, so
Black Friday sale.
I think that like so I started looking at businesses on Acquire like 8 months ago, like basically at the beginning of this year, pretty much sometime. And I started posting on Twitter around that time as well. Initially I was
Nice.
just like I wasn't even taking it seriously. And my first initial threads were like so bad, like that's why, like, dude, you've just been on Twitter for 10 weeks and your posts are like so much better than mine were 10 weeks in. So,
You know
yeah,
what?
no,
I that's not fair because I actually did a lot of social media when I was at the start of
fair.
COVID. So,
Yeah.
I grew I had a couple semi-viral posts on TikTok. I grew an Instagram to like 2,800 followers, and then side story, it got banned because I made a joke about Trump on puberty. I don't know if
No
anyone
way.
knows that page, but
Yeah, I
huge
did.
huge meme page, and I used to leave comments
Yeah,
there to generate social like
yeah,
profile views and get followers.
yeah.
And basically, I just made a joke about Trump. It went absolutely ballistic, like 150,000 likes. And then I get a notification that my account's banned literally the next day. And it was right during election time. So I think they had like
Yeah.
bots that would prey on your account if you messed with their public opinion of their candidate. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
besides the point. But basically, the point is that I've done a few things beforehand, and I'm definitely not that great at Twitter yet at all. And to
Mm.
be honest, man, I think the quality you put out there speaks for itself. It's unbelievable. So yeah, don't sell yourself short.
Hey, thanks, dude. I just like, I started out just because I liked the businesses on Acquire, I just thought it was like really cool that I could look at a bunch of these different small businesses and just even look at, what the description was, how they were making money, where they felt the growth opportunities were, why they were selling,
Hmm.
so yeah, no, I just really liked Acquire. But yeah, sorry, going back to do you want me to go back to Saucy or like keep talking about business Acquire? Not sure.
I think acquired's a great thing to segue into. I just wanted a little intro on Sourcely,
Awesome.
because dude, like you're I suppose at the time you're probably 20 years old. You've run a successful tutoring agency, right?
Yeah.
And what in the world came upon you to be like, I'm I'm gonna acquired looks amazing. I'm gonna buy a business at some point. Like when did that mindset shift
Oh,
happen? And where did you ever even find acquired? Because before you, I had never even heard of the platform.
yeah. So actually, as soon as I came across it, like the moment I came across Acquire, like I knew this was it. Like it was like love at first sight,
It's like your soulmate. Yeah, I love that.
No, like you would be surprised. Like as soon as I knew, as literally the first time I came across Acquire, like I was like, this is it. Because like I remember filtering down to like businesses below 5,000,
Yep.
and they were just like genuinely interesting and cool businesses, and I was like, okay, like and then if you once you like run the numbers and it's like, okay, if I buy a pre-revenue business for 5,000, how much can I actually make from it, right? Can I make 500 a month? Right? That's like 100 customers at $5 a customer, or maybe 10
Mhm.
customers at $50 a customer, right? So depending on each business and like what their potential is, what they're charging customers, how can you reach those customers, right? In order to get like, let's say 10 customers at $50, how many people do you need to reach? 1,000, 10,000, right? What's your conversion rate looking like? So yeah, I think I just like as soon as I started looking at businesses on Acquire, I was like very, very much in love and did not I just didn't want to do anything else. I literally like just I remember the first week within the first week I convinced myself I was gonna buy a business. And then I had to like talk myself out of it because it was too soon. Um, but yeah, then I had to go back to college, like my college work took a bit more of my time, but I was still looking at like literally almost every day I would look at Acquire, look at larger businesses, look at smaller businesses. So before like then I realized like the businesses I was looking at, nobody else really knew about them,
Hmm.
and I thought that it would just be really cool, like if I told others about them, because I thought they were cool businesses and I just felt that like others would too. So started writing up the content. Andrew, who's the CEO and founder of Acquire, he's an absolute like goat. He's just like super nice and genuine. He spends a lot of time on Twitter, and he like liked one of some of my initial posts, even before I had like 100 followers about
Wow.
Acquire, and I just kept
That's
like,
a good founder right there, man. Staying
dude,
involved
that's a
in his
great
user base.
founder. Yeah, he like really like genuinely interacts with the community, and I think that he is very genuine as well, and I really appreciate that.
And
So,
he's always, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm mixing him up with someone else. He's always talking about interviewing customers, right?
oh
Interviewing
yeah,
customers. If you're not doing, 100 customer interviews every single, month or every single quarter, you're failing your product development basically because it's not informed enough. As a
yeah.
CEO, even.
No,
I
I
love
think
that.
I've seen like Acquire get a lot of stick for some of the things that they do on Twitter just because of some people, their listing restrictions are stricter than other marketplaces. But I think that like a lot of what they do has a reason behind it, right? They're not doing anything with like
They want to
the
attract serious buyers,
exactly
right?
exactly that's the whole thing, right? They wanna really
I know
genuinely attract
immediately why he's
serious
doing it.
buyers.
Yeah. Seems obvious.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
but there are also other things that are like there was a lot of buzz about around they kind of have their own multiples that according to their data what businesses have been sold for, but a lot
Mhm.
of people were just like, who are you to say that, and they were rejecting listings because of that, because they felt prices were too high for some of them, and in some cases they were wrong, right? Businesses that they said were being priced too high, the founder was able to find somebody else willing to match his asking price, but I think they were just kind of doing what they felt, right? And as long as they're honest and transparent about everything, I I think they should be allowed certain mistakes, but yeah, no, so he
At the end of the
like
day, it's their platform. And, you know,
exactly, yeah,
in my mind, the thinking behind it is that you don't want your platform to be flooded with overpriced businesses because they
exactly,
look to this niche business as a blueprint for what their business could be valued at, especially because there's so much ambiguity behind an acquired listing, right? You're not
yeah,
getting all the facts. You're
yeah,
getting a good amount of information, but really the amount of information you're provided, it is only enough for you to have initial interest. It's never enough to make any sort of decision, of
oh,
course. So,
definitely,
they
yeah,
don't want to put their marketplace and user experience at risk by
yeah,
allowing disproportionately high
yeah,
listings to
yeah.
pull the
I think
rest of
there is
the niche
like
up.
honestly on Acquire, most of the listings are stale, right? Like how it is with
Yeah.
most of these marketplaces,
I was looking through it and I
Yeah,
felt that way.
yeah. A lot of it is stale, and I think they do need to do a bit of a better job of cleaning it up. I don't know if they have done anything in terms of cleaning up old listings, but I do think that there are
Yeah.
some listings that are like overpriced, or some that like when you go on it, the website isn't even like up anymore, you know. Many like the metrics haven't been updated for like 6 months. So like it's really hard to tell, like make any kind of like even get interested in a business when you don't know what's been happening for 6 months, So yeah, no, I definitely think there's like
Does the
there's
business
some
even
stuff.
exist in six after
Yeah,
6 months, right?
exactly, right? And but they do get like a
Yeah.
ridiculous amount of listings as well, right? I think they're getting like a few thousand a month, which is like almost like 50 or 100 a day, which is absurd, So they
Basically any student side project that the student wasn't actually that serious about, The code basically in the brand gets slapped onto acquired. I find these
I
days.
think there's a lot of other businesses as well. A lot of people are looking for exits.
Oh,
I
I mean,
think,
in
and
terms of like the huge
yeah,
volume. I think
yeah,
that's one of the
definitely.
reasons why there's so many every day.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there's just so many indie hackers, somebody who's like not really touched the project for years, like has some mobile app or a website that's just running on Google Ads.
Hmm.
Why not sell it for two, three times what you would make on it in a year? If you can, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of these people who've had these projects for a while, because until, of course, before Acquire came, there were other marketplaces, but honestly, there haven't, it's not really been as mainstream as Acquire is kind of making it, and they've not been as popular. So yeah, I really think that they have something special, they've really enabled a lot of things for a lot of people, like um on one side there's like a lot of college students, indie hackers, people like, let's say, even somebody in India, like built some kind of website or an app. How that, like, for him to sell to a US seller is so much more valuable than anybody else in India, just because of like the difference in like dollar to rupee, right? So
Yep.
even just in like facilitating that they've opened up a lot of opportunities for a lot of people. And I think like,
They've almost they've almost decentralized business acquisition
yeah,
is the way you can
yeah,
view it in that sense, right? They've made business acquisition at small scale a global venture for anyone to be a
yeah,
part of and anyone to sell. That's a fairly good point. I actually never considered that. But to kind of shift the conversation away, from what Acquired's doing and how amazing they are. Which, by the way, man, like I said, like Acquired is, I hadn't even considered acquisition as a possibility at a micro level until I saw your
yeah,
post, and you blew my mind. I found myself just like you, digging through business after business on Acquired, and like just thinking about the ways I could distribute it, the ways I could position it, the offer I would use,
yeah. It's
how
just
I
so,
would handle outreach, and it's a really fun and challenging exercise to just go through. And I think even if you don't buy a business, if you're trying to figure out what your niche is and what your offer is going to be and who you want to help and how you want to help them, going on Acquired can be a great experiment to
not
find
so
out
much.
if
Yeah,
you would want
yeah,
to sell something, right? Yeah, like you would want
yeah.
to sell something like this, like that, etc. And
Totally. And
I
even
think
even
honestly, the first time I went
what you
onto
said.
it,
Yeah,
yeah, the first time I went onto it, I was like, same thing as you. I think in the very near term, I'm going to acquire a business. And actually, you know, one of the I mentioned on my Twitter a couple weeks ago, one of our best applications ended up shutting down. Um,
hmm.
they were a great bespoke landing page builder. You could personalize the landing pages with basically, account based marketing. So,
Yeah.
you know, but instead of paying $36,000 a year like you do with whatever market tailor it is,
Hmm.
you're paying like, $200 a month, and you can personalize 10,000 landing pages to make it so it says, "Hello, Dev Shah. You know, I saw
Hmm.
Sourcely and I just had to
Yeah,
send you this video,
yeah,
or I saw that you have like,
yeah.
57,332 followers and I just knew my ghostwriting was for you. That
Hmm.
level of personalization, I was like,
Yeah,
I got to buy this business.
yeah,
Unfortunately, they were VC backed, and once there's
yeah,
VCs, even if it's a worthless business, it's not worthless to them, right? So,
yeah,
so yeah, man, I think that is super interesting. But I think the direction I want to take this is like when you hit acquired, was Andrew a big inspiration for how you go about evaluating businesses? How do you evaluate a business yourself? Are you following those principles? Because I feel like
yeah,
your way of going about it is kind of uniquely your own, at least these days.
yeah. No, I'd say so. Andrew's definitely been like an inspiration in the sense of how he handles a choir, but he doesn't really like share a lot about this kind of valuations, even like his posts are a lot of general generic advice, like he is doing what he's got to do.
You
Um
have to cater
but
to a large audience, right?
yeah, no, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think in terms of valuation, there's like, yeah, sure, there's like, you can have fixed fundamentals and fixed way to do it, but especially with these micro businesses and with like just the diversity in terms of industries, what they're doing, so many of them are like genuinely, I would feel one for one in terms of like the niche they operate in, many of them don't have direct competitors, whether they operate in a certain area where there's nobody else in that niche near them, or they're just in an online space where like it's just so massive that like even if you're in like tens of thousands of MRR, you're like a drop in the bucket. So
Mm,
that it's very hard to value them. I think um you gotta have some kind of bearing, right? So I think that's where you need the most, because it's difficult to value something just with a one-off, but if you can compare it to other businesses or other things, that helps a lot, right? So I think for me, it's a lot of, um, I guess this is more like how I evaluate opportunities more than just the businesses, where it's like comparing, okay, if I bought this business for say 10,000 compared to if I bought another business for 5,000, right? What is the different kinds of growth that I'm gonna see? But yeah, I guess so that is more me doing opportunities in terms of the valuations themselves for each business. I think you gotta just do it business by business, right? Depending on its profitability, how strong is kind of its customer acquisition channels, right? Many of these businesses, like their customer acquisition, they don't really have anything, right, in terms of getting new customers. But if you have something that already has organic customer acquisition through SEO, or maybe it has organic socials, that really helps, right? Because then you can start putting a multiple on its revenue, because that's how you value something, right? You look at what it's making right now, and then you think, okay, depending on what it's making right now, whether it's 100,000, whether it's 1,000, how much would I be willing to pay for something like that, right? Would I pay two times, three times? Would I just pay half of what it's making in a year, right? Because for Saucely, we paid zero point 0.8
mhm,
times what it was making in a year, right? So
mhm.
it really like is hard to value these kinds of micro businesses. I think that a lot of the sellers have a certain valuation in mind, which just isn't as realistic. Many of them just put like, okay, like it's making so much, like it's making 10,000, 2 to 3 times revenue. That's what it should be sold for, right? But then you're like, it's like 10% profit margins. There's no organic customer
There's only
acquisition,
one acquisition channel. All the customers were
Exactly.
onboarded in a 1 month period. There's just like
Exactly.
so many things not being accounted for,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. So you really do just have to take a lot of it with a grain of salt, like make sure like yes, you can use multiples, but I feel like a lot of them are arbitrary. It really depends on the business itself. So yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think, beyond the multiples, beyond all that, is there anything that comes into it just like, when you found Sourcely,
Hmm.
I'm realizing right away, Sourcely makes sense for you. For those of you listening that don't know, Dev's also a student. He did a tutoring agency. So his experience aligns extremely well with his ICP for Sourcely, which is students looking for a tool that can help them find sources really, really, really fast. So did that kind of hands-on experience, life experience, play a huge role in your eventual acquisition of Sourcely, or
Oh,
were you looking at businesses kind of outside of that?
yeah, for sure. So, first of all, when you referred to the audience, I, for a second, I forgot we were doing a podcast, and then I was a bit confused, and then I remembered. So that was a really funny moment for me. But
Uh,
yeah, no. So
uh,
I very strongly believe that people should look at businesses where they have some kind of existing strength, some kind of knowledge, right? For me, it is that I am a student right now, right? So I just understand the target market so much better. I have access to organic distribution through my friends, through knowing different people, right? And it just gives me a leg up in terms of being able to operate it much better, much more confidently than I would be operating a business completely out of anything that I know, right? But I think I
Hmm.
have been looking at businesses that are across a lot of different ranges, but I think that's mainly out of interest, right? So like I like posting about them on Twitter, and I like just looking at them, I find them interesting, but I think I would only consider buying a business that I have some kind of existing knowledge in, previous expertise in, or I know that like there's already something going for me when I buy the business, right? So right now, like I'm looking at pretty much anything education on Acquire, right? Anything student based, around student AI tools, especially, so just because like I already have distribution set up now, like my second acquisition actually on Acquire was a student AI tool. I don't even really talk about it much on Twitter just because, there's only so many things you can talk about without everybody getting super confused. So, yeah, even that's like a student AI tool that helps college students when they're applying to UK colleges. So I think it definitely makes a lot of sense, to like kind of use what you already have kind of an expertise in. So with Pocket Fund, we're actually we're looking at acquiring this Star Wars based newsletter. And that's just because like I love Star Wars, like I think it would be really fun to to like be running a Star Wars business. And it makes a lot of sense, like they have a few thousand subscribers on the newsletter. They have a Facebook page which has like a few 10,000 followers, so they have a lot of social proof in that sense. And I think
Yeah.
it can very easily become like some kind of media offering to different Star Wars businesses, so
Yeah.
yeah, I
Someone
think
selling
like
figurines, it could be
exactly, exactly,
anything.
there's a
You
lot
could
of,
end up
yeah,
partnering with a YouTube channel or something to have guest
yeah.
posts on it. You never know,
Yeah,
right?
those are literally the first two ideas I had. Like literally a YouTube channel and somebody selling some kind of like Star Wars products, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think you should
That'd
definitely
be
be
cool.
looking at your interests. Like I mean, like we were talking about before we hopped on call, about you looking at businesses where would benefit from kind of cold outreach or cold email because that's a distribution channel that you have so much expertise, So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the same concept applies, applying your skill sets for sure. But I think it's the interest side of things that really
Yeah.
speaks to me, and it's one thing that I'm constantly trying to push. And actually, you know, I had a conversation with Eric Lamb just a bit earlier, and that was one of the core things he mentioned. Actually, there's two things that you've said that are the almost the exact same as what he said, and he's really a market research savant. It's all he does. It's his main focus. His newsletter is all about finding and sourcing business ideas, as opposed to existing businesses. But the crossover is there, and his big thing is one: does it have competitors? Exactly what you mentioned, a competitor that's successful in order to find a valuation for it. And then, two, does he have any sort of meaningful interest in it? And then the final thing is he went through and he attempted to test market fit on every single idea he bootstrapped. And as a result, he's tried so many different ideas and he's done them with limited risk. So before you acquired Sourcely, before end up maybe acquiring this Star Wars media kind of, Facebook group, Facebook audience, etc. Uh, did you take any steps to assess market fit, or was your market fit kind of boots on the ground interviews, just with fellow students? How'd you go about
Yeah,
it?
so I definitely say with Saucely and the Star Wars newsletter, just because these are like so strongly within my interests, like I will watch like Star Wars YouTube videos for fun, right? So I just generally have a good idea for what what the fan base would be looking for, what the community would interact with, the different kinds of people that are selling products out there, how would we
You
reach them?
are the customer,
Exactly,
basically, right?
exactly. I am the
I
customer,
love
and
that.
firstly, I am the customer, right? So
Yep.
that helps a lot in terms of finding that, you know, kind of being like a sounding board on that business idea, right? It's like, okay, will this actually work, and I think that's the big advantage to buying a business that's already been running for a while, is that they've kind of already done a lot of that testing for you, right? And what you need to go in there and do is a lot about the execution, right? You need to be able to take whatever information they can give you, what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, and how can you take what has worked for them and like make it a lot better, right? Execute it in a better way, right? So with Saucy, what had really worked for them was that students just found the tool genuinely helpful, right? They had gotten featured by an influencer on Twitter, who, like, that thread got, like, actually after, so before the acquisition of Saucely, that thread was at a few hundred K. After the acquisition, it reached 1 million views. And this was just like organically because it that thread just did like ridiculously well. And it was actually like he found the tool organically. So the previous owners did not even do any kind of like as much outreach, He didn't even like link the tool, like he didn't link
Wow.
the website in the thread at all. He didn't tag them because he just did it all, like he just found it, and he didn't, he obviously didn't want to just like send them out to like a tool, I guess he didn't know. But yeah, like and also his thread had like videos of him using it and showing how to use it, which I think was like
Wow.
super, super helpful, because like it really like shows you exactly how it works. So yeah, just like seeing all these things, you can tell that like there is potential there, right? Like that has worked for them. So then you can just like, you just want to take what has worked for them and then reuse that, right? And then how can you do it in your own way? How can you multiply that, right? Like by going for a bunch of different influencers, right? By targeting SEO where if they're Googling for it, especially like queries around something like this, they're very likely to want to buy what you have to offer them, right? So
Mhm.
it's really about then like reaching the right
Intent.
target market. I think is something that has helped Saucely the most in its growth, right? I think it's just like helped it absolutely just like have a very high conversion rate in terms of, I think it's, yeah, our conversion rate for at least, number of people coming onto the site to getting a free plan at least, or trying it out is fairly high, and then it's a lot about converting those free users to paid users, right? I think like I haven't even been able to like start focusing a lot on that because I don't think like we're at the scale at which converting free users to paid users is really the focus, right? I think like we're growing super quickly, and just trying to get as many people into our ecosystem as we can should be the focus.
Hmm.
So yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I think part of turning those, free users into paid users is, segmenting the signups into specific demographics. Depends on the information you collect, and then eventually you can basically build out an entire suite of activation videos that show them exactly how they can take advantage of the tool
Yeah.
best for their specific use case by upgrading it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a ton of opportunity there, but it's about where to put the resources effectively, and that's the balancing act of business, right?
Mhm.
That's basically what
Yeah.
it comes down to. So
Yeah. No, definitely.
no,
Like,
I mean, I think it's clear you're doing the right things though. Your
yeah.
growth has been astounding.
No, thank you, dude. I definitely appreciate that. Now, we're trying for sure, and resource allocation is like, it's everything, how it defines how quickly you grow, how well you grow, and honestly, how sustainable that growth is, right? I think that's something that's really important for us. We don't want to just be like, that's why I think like, so TikTok was the largest customer acquisition channel for Sourcely before acquisition, right? And then because we bought it, so another reason why we got such a low price on it was because the summer started, right? So literally like all numbers were down. There was nobody really buying it, so so they were more willing to sell it for a lower price, right? And
Yeah.
there was nobody watching like student-based TikToks either, right? So it didn't make sense to continue posting on TikTok. So that's why we switched to like focusing on influencers and SEO. So,
Yeah.
so that switch was definitely like really, really helpful because like it wouldn't have worked, to keep going on TikTok. But now like we're trying to start that back up. So yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's hard to make that switch, especially if your business has been, well, at the time it wasn't your business, but if once it became your business, you're like, okay, all of the customers have been coming through this one acquisition channel. Nothing else has been tested, but I have a limited budget. Do I pivot acquisition channels into something that I don't know will work or not? Or do I keep going down, the
Yeah.
same road and maybe do it better? And outside looking in, I'm sitting here, I'm like, TikTok, very Gen Z heavy, definitely. Tons of Gen Z people on there, which are likely to be students. You have a lot of different micro niche influencers that post quick videos with integrated ads, which can be great. UGC content's a big thing. So taking that jump, honestly, that like super hard decision, man. What took you there? Like, walk me
Yeah.
through your decision making process prior to a pivot, because it seems like you know how to pivot, man. Early days, but you're killing it with the pivots.
No,
So,
I think so. I think I knew like when we bought it, I knew that like we couldn't continue with TikTok, right? Because it was very so actually it wasn't even just like one customer acquisition channel. It was literally they had one TikTok that went viral that got them like
uh,
100 something paying users, and they had
okay,
about 100 of them still paying. So it was literally like just that one TikTok that had gone viral and one thread which picked up a lot of its views after acquisition because it just like was
yes,
organically picking up views. But yeah, so that was honestly, we didn't have much of a choice, right? Because TikTok wasn't going to keep working. And I didn't want something where it was going to be such a gamble, right? I wanted something that was more organic, more sustainable, and we knew would give us more guaranteed results, right? So that's why we went with SEO. I think like implementing SEO should always be the first thing that you think about when you look at a business, right? That's like the easiest kind of growth lever that you can pull, right? Just because a business or a site that's really not SEO optimized or trying to come up for those search words is just like like losing out on a lot of potential, right? You don't need to like be one of the top searches, like there's literally like millions and millions and millions of searches, you're just trying to get like 1,000 monthly views, then grow it to 10,000, right? So like Saucely started at 4,000 monthly views when we acquired it, and now it's almost at 20,000, right? And like it grows slowly. And so SEO made sense because it would take a while, right? So SEO takes 2 to 3 months to kick in. Fortunately, it kicked in super early for us on the 2 month mark, but
hmm
it made sense, right? Because it was the summer, we were able to actually take a step back, So actually, the summer was meant to be the time when we take a step back. We work on SEO, we try to establish these influencer relationships, and we just work on the features, right? So we revamped the website after acquiring it. The website was like really bad when we bought it, so we were it was mainly just like, so the first month, literally, like, we didn't even try to grow it, right? It just went in, revamping the website, doing all these,
you're
like,
basically
tasks.
setting up your distribution channels,
Exactly.
reformatting the language of
Exactly.
the website to make it more conversion focused, and then
Exactly.
when semester one starts of the new year, floodgates open. Is that the kind of
Exactly.
how you would boil it down?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we intended. That's what we thought it would be like.
Yeah.
And then the influencers started like replying to us, and that like opened the floodgates a lot earlier. I remember like
Nice.
the first time that like I recently like put this in a tweet where I was talking about some of the mistakes I made with Saucely, and the first time we went viral, like we weren't even expecting it. And we had like we were experimenting with the pricing system, and we had like a bit of a broken pricing plan that gave like them a free premium monthly instead of giving them like a limited version of it. And we realized like a couple of hours after it went viral, and we just gave a couple of like free monthly subscriptions, you know. Fortunately, like the cost for us, like Saucy it runs on very like really high profit margins. So, like couple of those free users was not that bad, but like it just like, you know, you can make mistakes as well, you know,
It
and
could have been a disaster, basically.
it could have. So the thing is that we earlier before that we didn't have a free plan, right? And I was kind of like, bro, like we need a free plan, but Wix is a pain in the ass to like use. So when we
Yeah,
created the free plan, we thought that it was just like a limited plan, right? But it actually gave them like a monthly subscription. So
that's insane.
it wasn't
It
limited.
wasn't a trial period at all.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. So like obviously then we canceled it after the first month, but then it was like, you know, it's okay. Like we can have, like, they can have the first month because like it ends up being like a few cents per customer. So it's really not that bad. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, so yeah, like you can make mistakes, you know, like it's bound to happen, but yeah, like it just made a lot of sense to um go for the influencers because it was free, right? So it was like we weren't offering them like any kind of we weren't offering going to them like asking to run ads or anything like that. It was in a very genuine way, like this like look at this like cool tool that we've built, you know, where also students and um a lot of the influencers that we reached out to, like, you know, we would watch some of their content, you know. Elman has done his PhD himself, so he understands a lot of like what a graduate student thinks like, you know, a researcher thinks like what are their problems. So, yeah, just approaching them in a genuine way and offering them to give them a free premium subscription themselves, right, to try it out. And if they find it interesting, to feature it on their channels for their audience to see. And like we ended up getting picked up by a couple of really cool influencers, and that just kind of like just jump started our growth, right? Every time that would happen, it would kind of be a spike. But what's great about Saucy is that it's on a monthly recurring revenue basis, right? So it ends up like even though it spikes, a lot of them stay on with us, right? As we keep going month on month. So that's why the spikes are really great for us because it's not just like one time payments, right? They're a part of kind of like this our ecosystem, you know, they're paying us every month. So yeah.
It's not like e-commerce where you have to have like an elaborate, email scheme or, subscription kind of
Exactly.
upsell to keep people on board, right? So,
Exactly.
no,
Then
that's really interesting. I
yeah.
think the thing to boil everything you said there down into is, dude, nothing beats having a great product with good market fit, man.
Yeah.
That your
Yeah.
distribution was fueled by that. If you came to these influencers with a terrible product, you never would have gone featured.
Yeah.
Period, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that that's a great lesson to be learned that you should never stop innovating your product because if people aren't willing to test it out for you for free, even when you're just sending it to them, then you've got some deeper problems. And I don't think marketing is one of them.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. That's for sure. I think like building a genuinely useful product is like a hack, you know? Like who would have thought?
Yeah, crazy. Who would have thought?
Yeah, no,
That's
but
so funny, man. Eric and I were, yeah, yeah. Eric and I were ripping on gurus a lot because it's the same concept. There's definitely a lot of extremely useless shit out there. So, you
yeah,
know, If you're enjoying the conversation, take a moment to share it with a friend or business partner because that is the best way to help this show grow. Thanks. My goal with this podcast really is to bring on who I think are people that in 10 years they're going to be like household names. Like I think you're a prospect for in 10 years people are like, holy shit, this dev guy, look at this portfolio of businesses he's run. Same with Eric. Like I want to talk to cool people doing cool shit, and I think the idea is that like you're getting the first sip of people's entrepreneurial journeys instead of, what ends up happening where you end up looking at Elon Musk's life from the lens of him as a billionaire already,
Mm,
rather than in the moment while he was building it,
yeah.
And not to like, put people on a pedestal and say that every guest on here is going to end up being an Elon Musk. Obviously not. But it's
Yeah.
that concept of it's way cooler to hear about the cool shit people are doing
Yeah.
before it goes truly parabolic.
Yeah. No, I
So
totally
yeah,
agree.
I just wanted to say that because I appreciate your journey, man. I think it's super interesting and super unique.
Thanks, dude. No, I think like there is a lot of survivor bias, right? Even like I think that all advice should be taken like with a pinch of salt, I think like there's what work for some people may not work for you, like each industry is very unique. Everybody's situation is very unique. So,
Mhm.
a lot of people also really like consume a lot of advice, but then don't do a lot of things where it's like you really need to be doing and then be consuming only so much advice, right? And that all of that advice needs to be focused on what you're doing in the moment, right? And that's kind of how you grow and build because like you said, there's just so much advice out there, right? Like and all of these gurus really are making like yes, many of them sure maybe genuinely helping people, but many of them also are putting out a lot of content that is misleading, that makes it seem a lot easier than it is.
Extremely cookie cutter.
Exactly.
It's I could go on a complete rant with you about this, man. Like the amount of videos that came out the moment AI dropped of, here's your next $1,000 a week side hustle using AI for graphic designing t-shirts from scratch or using Midjourney to create embroideries and da, 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 and it's a free business and anyone can do it. Well, if anyone can do it, man, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And that's the first rule is that if anyone can do it, your business is doomed to fail. It's doomed. So you know, I like what you mentioned about survivorship bias, and I like what you mentioned about like there is a lot of information out there, and it's hard to distill down exactly what's going to be
Yeah.
beneficial to you at the time. And taking action on what you're learning is the most powerful way to solidify a skill and actually make it applicable. Look at the amount of lead magnets that come through your Twitter feed, man.
Yeah.
So many people click a lead magnet, they reply fucking AI to receive the thing. And I guarantee 99 out of 100 of those lead magnets go unread and no one takes
Yeah.
action on it. And
Yeah.
in fact, my entire business model is built on the fact that people don't take action. All I do is send people exactly how to set up a cold email system in their business. I
Yeah.
tell them the exact blueprint, how to prospect for their niche, how to find their customers, how to send the emails, the type of email to send, the type of video to send. Nobody does it themselves. They just want someone to do it for them. So I think that shows like the essence of business really is in the taking action.
Yeah.
So if you want to build your
Yeah.
business, fucking take
That's really
action, man.
that's so
So
true.
yeah, I agree. I agree. Bit of a tangent. But speaking on that survivorship bias, man, like how do you find the right sources of information and how do you walk your own path? Like
That's
how do you do that with Sourcely? Like you clearly just learned SEO from scratch. That's insane. You learned it super fast. It's working. Walk me through it. How do people build these skills?
yeah, so I think like it is by first of all being very intentional about what you're looking for, right? If you're just like, oh, I want to like find my passion, but like, what does that mean, right? Like, you have to give it some kind of direction, like, are you interested in in arts, in a certain industry, what are you really looking for? Because I think by really defining the kind of advice you're looking for, or the kind of learning that you're trying to get. Because if you can like define the outcomes really well, then it becomes a lot easier to actually determine what the input, or what kind of advice you should be looking for should be. So I'd say with like stuff like SEO, a lot of things like that can be learned. There's generally a lot of information out there available for free, so it was a lot of just like reading about it on online, going through YouTube videos. There's a lot of useful information on Twitter. I think it's called the Boring Marketer. His Twitter handle, it's like literally just like go through
Greg
his.
Eisenberg's brand.
Yeah, exactly. Literally just like go through those posts. That's
That's
all you need to learn about SEO. Like and people
nice.
overcomplicate it, right? It's like, it's, you don't need to know the like every single aspect of SEO. Like I still don't really understand SEO besides like, okay, there's keywords and you write articles for them. Like that's the extent of SEO that I know. I'm working with a developer who does the technical SEO, so like on-site SEO, then like stuff like adding images, adding descriptions to those images. You have to have like the keywords
Header
or
one, header two, make sure your
something.
HTML text. Yeah.
All these different, so like there's
Yeah.
like a checklist, like you just got to follow that checklist. And like, so those are the kinds of things that can be learned, right? If you really want to, so like that you can go specific with. But then there's more generic stuff, right? Well, not generic, but just stuff that's harder to find advice for, right? Where it's like,
Mm.
just work hard, right? It's not just about working hard, you really do have to work smart. And yeah, I think that advice is harder to get. I think the best way to do that is like by actually, like we just spoke about, having a bias for kind of action, right? And make sure that you're always acting and then getting advice on that action rather than just something up in the air. I think that really helps you really like kind of distill what you're looking for, because if you don't really know what you're looking for, it's very difficult for you to find that, right? Or even for somebody to give it to you. But yeah, and I think something else that's helped me a lot is just like, are they where you would want to be, and you also don't want to look at somebody that's like 20 steps ahead of you, right? You want to be talking to somebody that's 2 steps ahead of you, or not that far ahead of you, because then they're also actively in the game, right? Like, although maybe, your parents' advice and their friends' advice may be super helpful, but they are also, not as actively in the game. And you do want to find somebody who is active themselves, who's hustling like you are, and that is willing to help you out. Because I think that that's something I'm sure even you can attest to, is that like once you've once you've done something and you see somebody else working towards something similar or just working towards their own thing, you want to help them however you can, right? Whatever advice you can give them. And I think a lot of people are open to giving that advice.
Especially when they're an action taker.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when they're an action taker.
Yeah.
I think like
Big
that's
time.
the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't remember how it happened, but I think I ended up like reviewing some of your email stuff. And
Oh
I was
yeah,
just pumped to do it because again, I was like, dude, Dev is doing some cool stuff. Like I was like, yeah, man, I'll take a stab at it tonight. And I just went through
yeah,
your
that was
sequence and I
awesome.
was like,
Thank
yeah,
you.
a couple of
That's
suggestions here, there. Yeah,
yeah,
no worries. Literally any time, but it's the same concept. Like I know email
yeah,
and when I see people, I mean like as it stands, I've probably like given free coaching to like 10 people so far on X. And the idea there is just, I have these limited set of skills and I'm happy to share them with
yeah,
whoever's
yeah.
willing to take action on them. And I've actually got this great guy that's taking action on them lately and I'm super proud of him. He just
That's
comes back to
awesome.
me every day with cool stuff. He's like ideating and doing and I'm like, this is a dream come true. This must be how I can't remember his name, like Marcus Aurelius's like adoptive father, who was the previous Roman emperor, whoever it was. That must be how he felt. He had this like random adopted son that was just willing to learn anything and everything. That's the best. That's the best. And I think one
Yeah.
thing that really stood out to me there is the one step ahead, two steps ahead thing, Dev, where you same idea, cycling back. You can't look at Alex Hormozy and actually glean a lot from him
Yeah.
on the average day. Because if you have a conversation, his day to day is so far beyond anything you could imagine in terms of what would have impact on your business versus a business of that size, what he worries about day to day. It's hard to relate, and it's honestly probably difficult for him to give advice beyond stuff that like it's lacking detail at this stage.
Yeah.
Although his advice is unbelievable, I'm a huge Hormozy fan. Even $100 million leads, fantastic book, good starting point. But the actual like application and what it looks like to go from A to Z on that stuff is a bit out of touch or lacking because, dude, this guy hasn't had to do any of this stuff in the last 6 years. He's
Yeah.
way more occupied with shit 40 steps beyond him. And that's what he's going to be able to talk into
No, and
detail
he's
about
also
because he's personally
optimizing for
experiencing it
different
right
things.
now.
Yeah. He's not
Yes.
optimizing for the advice he's giving. He's optimizing for a hook. He's having to give like this is complicated and hard advice to give in a 60-second reel, right? Especially with an intro and an ending
Yes.
and like all these different things. So like it is also like you can't expect to like solve your advice through reels, right? Like that is not gonna give you the best advice, right? Like you have to look for sources beyond that, right? You have to like find thought leaders, that you admire,
And to find sources, you should use Sourcely AI, guys.
Yes. Well, maybe not quite
Yeah.
the same use case, but it
Not the
doesn't
same. I
hurt.
know. It's
It
it's more
doesn't
so like
hurt.
one thought leader versus yeah. No,
Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah. No. No. It.
But yeah, no, I think sorry, I think we're a bit out of sync here. But I yeah, no, I think what it boils down to is just making sure that you're looking at someone who's, like you said, in a position that you want to be in, a couple steps ahead of you, and oftentimes they're going to be willing to talk to you one on one, and that's the most powerful thing is being able to get actionable advice for exactly what you're doing because everyone's journey is so different, man.
Yeah.
The most of the guru advice out there, it has to be somewhat general, and you know
Yeah.
I'm trying to do exercises where I give people prospecting systems that are specific. Like today, I said, here's how I get your first five clients in the next 90 days if you're a ghostwriter. Like unique positioning of the offer, where to find leads, who to go to. Like it's rare to find that just lying around unless it's a super saturated market. So you have
Yeah.
to be careful with where you get your information from. And like you said, Dev, be super careful of survivorship bias
Yeah.
because unless something's been repeated, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, and it's showing great effects 10 times in a row across industries, 10 times in a row in each industry,
Gonna
you can't know
happen.
for
Yeah.
sure that this is
Yeah.
actually an applicable strategy to what you're doing. So, how do you avoid that survivorship bias? Is it just kind of like looking at stuff that you think is good and then just testing it for yourself, that whole taking action thing?
I think it's a lot about then just like having faith in yourself, like at the end of the day, it is your job to take the action, right? You're not just trying to like, you're not taking advice and then just doing exactly what they say, right? Although there are some situations that need it, but you need to take that advice, learn what you can from it, and then implement that in your situation, right? So I think that's where that conversion is like always the hardest part, right? It's like, how do you actually implement this advice? And that's super hard, right? So in order to do that, you need to be able to actually get actionable advice, right? Where it's not just, oh, like something super aloof, where it's like sometimes you get advice and it's like, okay, but like what can I do tomorrow? That should be the question that you ask yourself when you get advice. Like what are things that you can act on, right? Like a lot of people give advice like, oh, like you should find your passion, and then once you have that, you can um figure out a product based on a problem
Not the
that
mindset, coaches.
yeah, literally. So it's like very like it's like yeah, you can just build a product by solving a problem that you have, but it's not that easy, right? You actually have to imagine the product. What would that look like? Manufacturing, right? Is it software? Is it like something physical? Who would you sell to? There's so many things beyond that. So you really want to try to find advice that is super actionable because otherwise there's just you're not really gonna get much from it.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful because if you're not if you're not really actively listening to advice and taking it in and distilling it into ways that you can apply it, you're
Exactly.
not making much of it.
Yeah.
Eric off camera on my last conversation for this podcast asked me a really good question. And he just said, you haven't been applying my Reddit strategy, which, he uses Reddit as a great newsletter growth channel for free, basically. He was like, you haven't applied it. So why do you follow me? Like, what's the value you're getting? And, I gave it some thought and I realized, he used extremely integrated call to actions, like so integrated they were impossible to recognize. He
Hmm.
then took competitors and paired them next to his call to action to hide it even further. So he was literally directing people to his competitor newsletters in order to raise social proof,
Hmm.
right? So known commodities, him a small newsletter. I was like, this is insane. I need to find a way to make call to actions in cold email way more chill, way more subverted,
Yeah.
way more neutral. And I believe the nonchalantness of these call to actions in my cold email campaigns and the way I've applied it to like the videos inside of my cold email campaigns, how they're so value focused, it had a monumental effect on creating a unique selling proposition for the way I do cold email. Because now when someone receives a cold email from me and they express interest, they get a video where I tell them exactly how to do everything I'm going to do for them
Hmm.
themselves. I say, "Hey, do it. All yours." And then I go, if you don't want to do it or want more information on these strategies,
Yeah.
I can hop on a quick call with you, right? And we can go into it in detail, no obligation. Hop on the call. They get to that call, they're fully qualified as a person interested in the exact thing I do because I literally said, "This is what I do, do it yourself." Right? So now it's
Yeah.
not a cold call. It's a very warm, hot
Yeah.
prospect, which is sick. And I realized that that inspiration came from a random post about the way this guy markets on Reddit, which is insane. You need to take the information you're getting and distill it into how you can apply it to you specifically. And that will make it change in certain ways.
Totally, totally. Like distilling it and being able to apply, like it's not that easy either, right? I think it is a skill in itself, but it really is only something that you get better by doing, by actually putting it into practice and like kind of refining that skill.
Yes. Yes. And people sometimes ask me as well, just on that skill note, like, how are you able to speak without like filler words, for instance? Ahs, or stutters or things like this. And I'm like, dude, I worked at Laser Quest for 2 years when I was like 17, 18, 19. All I did was speak off the cuff to people, riffing, whether it was like a 6-minute script for teaching people how to play the game, directing audiences, all age groups. I had to make puns to get tips. I was constantly having to flirt with moms, like, let's be honest, because that's the best way to get tips. And, all of that is the reason why I can hop into Looms
Yeah.
and, I've recorded 250 plus personalized Looms. Of course I'm going to be able to talk well. It's all about taking action and building the skill set. So, yeah, I really resonate with what you're saying there, but I think this could be a good time to switch gears quickly just before we kind of end off here. Um One thing I really wanted to ask you, man, and it's just because I find it unbelievable that you run a business while being a student while also running potentially two more businesses now, and you have your pocket fund, which is a whole nother group to run. So how do you juggle it all? How do you allocate your time? Because I know you tell me all the time you're not a super organized guy. Like, what's the flow?
Honestly, I've been getting a lot more organized, okay? So I have a couple of, it's a mix of, I have a couple of tools I use. There's this thing called Motion, which like I just started using it like a week ago, and it's literally changed everything about how I like do my calendar, how I do tasks. It's called like Motion.ai,
Wow.
something like that. It's like a Google Calendar slash, but you get to input your tasks on it, and it kind of, it has an AI that then like inputs those tasks on your calendar on its own, right? And then you can just like move the tasks around, stuff like that. And like they have a phone app, so anytime I think of a task, I can just go on my phone, add it. I have like you have projects, and then under projects you have um something else. So basically like there's a good way to like, you know organize the tasks as well, so like what you have remaining. There can be long term tasks, short term tasks. So yeah, I'd definitely say like just making use of like organization tools as much as I can, because I can't keep anything organized
Mhm.
myself, right? So if I'm using something else to kind of do it, I think that helps a lot, because otherwise I was trying to keep everything in my head, and that just got like way too much. Like pretty much when I started the semester back up. So during the summer it was more chill because I didn't have like a class to do, like classes to do. Um but yeah, since the semester started back up, like just been a lot more hectic, then it is a bit like of being okay with there just will be fires burning at every point in time, and you just kind of have to be okay with that. Um, you have to know that like there is only so many things you can do. You have to be okay with like letting some things go, and just like kind of like the Pareto principle, right? Like really find that 20% of things that you can do that give you the 80% results, right? And then you don't need to really worry about the other 80% as much. So I think I've gotten really good at kind of finding that 20%, which can give me most of the results, right? So that's definitely been like the most helpful thing. And then it is also a bit about like letting school go a bit. Like I've, I have a pretty bad GPA, and I'm completely okay with that. And so yeah, it is a bit about like prioritizing then, like if I have an assignment due, but even if it's just like a tweet to put up, right? And I'm just gonna put up the tweet, like it's uh, or like my newsletter, like it's being consistent over there is a lot more important to me than even, submitting assignments late. Just because like it's what I want to do, I don't think I don't think like I'm gonna graduate college, I'm not like trying to drop out yet, but yeah, even C's get degrees, so it is about prioritization and like, yeah, just figuring out what's important to you.
Hey man, you're preaching to the choir. I think like that C's get degrees. I didn't even go to school, but I'm realizing that you've you've basically done the world's most expensive and in-depth market research for your eventual student tool empire that you're building out. So you found a way
We
to
have-
make a degree worth it. Everyone keeps talking about degrees aren't worth the money.
Yeah.
All you have to do is start a damn business, idiot. Come on, you've got the perfect playground.
Yeah, no, I really do think that college can just be like 4 years where people experiment with businesses and try to find something cool. That's what I'm trying to do with Pocket Fund. It's just like create like an environment for that in college, because I think like that's just the best way to do it. It gives you so much value.
Dude, I think you're mobilizing just such a cool community around that. And community is one of the things in just content and being out there. It's one of the things I didn't do for the first like 2.5 years of business that I found myself in, and probably my number one regret is
Mm-hmm.
not collaborating with people, talking to people like you, Dev, because like there's so many small knowledge gaps to be filled in,
Yeah.
almost infinite knowledge gaps to be filled in. And like you said, like sometimes advice or a perspective isn't applicable to you directly, but when you really sit there and think about how it relates to what you're doing, that unique perspective over here can all of a sudden have a measurable impact on something way, way outside of what it's actually about. So I love that, man. I love your perspective. You got your priorities straight, boil it down. If you're not organized like Dev here, get an app, outsource it, outsource your organization. I've seen Motion, I tried it myself, but personally, I do great with just like simple
Yeah.
checklists. I've got a piece of paper, I've got a card here. I write down exactly what the top 5 things I want to do on the day, and I do it the night before, and I get to work basically. And
Yeah.
then I have some
That's all.
some time blocks in my calendar where I operate inside of those.
Yeah, that's all you need. That's literally it. That's literally it.
Nice, nice. So, I guess the last thing I want to ask you here is when you started Sourcely, like 4 months ago, obviously you've gone from an potentially arbitrary evaluation of 4 to 150K, but it is definitely rooted in logic.
Yeah.
The evaluation that you've kind of applied to it. Potentially it could be more, potentially it could be less, but that's up to the market to decide, of course. But when you started this journey, where did you expect to be in 4 months? And like where now after you answer that question, where did you expect to be in 4 months when you started Sourcely, and where do you expect to be 4 months from now that you're 4 months in?
That's a really good question. Honestly, when I started it, I had no idea what 4 months in would look like. I was just down for the ride. Like I just thought it would be really fun and cool to do. So I guess because it was in the summer, I had really mapped out that like, okay, the semester starts and then we kind of start marketing, stuff like that. So that was really what I had in mind even at the acquisition, right? Like even the first month that we spent, redoing the website, redoing the back end, or re-optimizing the code, making sure that like, it wasn't too expensive for us, stuff like that. Um, Even during that time, we didn't expect such explosive growth. So it's definitely like I really had no idea what in 4 months would look like. And I guess that also answers the next question, which is like, I'm not entirely sure what in 4 months from now will look like, but I obviously have a much better idea, right? So I do think that my goal for now is to get Saucely to 1,000 paying users, right? We're about halfway there now, as of this last month. So yeah, I think keep chugging along there. I think like my venture goal is a lot beyond that. I think that Saucely is a tool that can be at 10,000 paying users, and that would still barely be a drop in the bucket of like the millions and millions of students out there. So, yeah, no, I think like I definitely have a lot of high goals for it, but I also do want to be realistic, right? Wherein that our growth up till now has been explosive, and even if there is a dip, make sure that I'm kind of ready for that, right? Like kind of diversifying our customer acquisition channels now, right? I think the last month has literally just been like I stopped focusing on SEO pretty much at all. Influencer outreach has been more of a switch to now micro influencers and building kind of like an affiliate program. So yeah, I think like I'm trying to diversify our customer acquisition channels more, but once we have a couple in place and we can really push them, honestly, I'm not entirely sure where the limit is for Saucely right now, just because the growth has been like much more explosive than anything I could have first imagined. So yeah.
Dude, I think for any business, not knowing where the limit is a pretty exciting proposition. So it's not really a bad problem to have
It's not even
to
a
have it feel unlimited, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, and then, this is a bit off topic, but in the world of AI, like, what do you think the implication of AI will have long term, short term on society? Do you view it as a net good, or do you view it as something risky? I know there's differing opinions out there.
Yeah.
What's your take?
Yeah. Honestly, I like wouldn't even say I'm qualified in any way to give like an opinion on that, but I like to think that it would be a net good, right?
Right.
I like to think that because
Yeah.
the thing is the potential is there in it to literally solve a lot of problems in the world or cause a lot of problems, right? So the potential in it is both sided, right? It really is a lot about how do the people choose to harness it, right? What are the different applications that get popular? You know, how do we choose to now augment our life with AI, and it's really going to become a lot about individual kind of decisions, like how with social media, where it's like, okay, like a lot of people use social media and like it's not a problem for them, right? Like I love scrolling through Instagram every once in a while, looking at memes, like it's like looking at football highlights, like it's always like a fun part of my day, but then when it's like when you're using it like 4 or 5 hours a day, and you're just not happy about it, it's like clearly affecting your mood. At that time it's negative, right? So yeah, I think it's like it really is about how we kind of interact with it. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that's a definitive answer, but yeah, I guess I don't know, but hopefully good. I like to
It's a
think,
hard question to answer.
yeah, yeah,
It is. And I don't blame you there. I think it was a question I asked just because it was a question from kind of the audience from the post I made about the conversation we'd be having, and I thought it might be a good idea to let that one slip through the cracks, just because I think your answer is similar to mine, and I think if you want the most comprehensive breakdown of what AI looks like from a neutral standpoint, and from literally far end worst case scenario to best case scenario and everything in between, you just read the book 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by
hmm,
Yuval Harari.
hmm,
And that book will walk you through, the potential, you know, equity that it could bring the world, equal opportunity
yeah,
across the globe, the potential for solving food crises, climate crises, et cetera, and then also all the risks that are posed alongside that.
hmm,
So
hmm.
I don't know. I think the risk of AI might be overhyped at this stage, but I think it's good to be aware. And
Yeah,
I'm glad
yeah,
that people are thinking about it, because if we don't think about it now, you definitely don't want to think about it too late, right?
definitely. I couldn't agree with you more.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, I think from there we'll look to wrap it up. I do want to give you a chance, Dev, to just shout out what you're doing. Where can people follow you? Um, you know, what kind of stuff should they check out? If they're a student, obviously check out Sourcely AI. I would highly recommend. He just got the domain name, so when you type in sourcely.ai, it will redirect you to the correct site. God bless. But yeah, go ahead, man. Tell us what you're
Yeah,
focusing on a bit more and where to find you.
for sure. I mean, like, I think Twitter, of course, X, my handle is best of acquire. I also post on LinkedIn. I've been taking LinkedIn more seriously, so if you want to drop me a follow there, connect with me there, that's just Dev Shah. And yeah, check out my newsletter, it's in the bio, link in bio in both my Twitter and LinkedIn. And yeah, like feel free to drop me a message, shoot me a DM, I think my DMs are open on LinkedIn and Twitter, I just love talking about businesses and I'm more than happy to like help anybody who's looking at starting one of their own, trying to acquire one. Yeah.
Awesome. super humble and always looking to help people. That's what I love. Yeah, we'll cut it off there.
Awesome. Hey,